state now.
The Radio Whammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Russell Norman.
Yeah, co-leader of the Greens, Russell Norman, with us this morning. Morning, Russell.
Morning, Whammo.
A few issues to get through today. First of all, boat people. John Key's expecting boat people to arrive on New Zealand shores any time, so he wants to help the Aussies set up some kind of detention centre in Timor. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's pretty unlikely we're going to see boat people travelling all the way from Sri Lanka or elsewhere all the way to New Zealand in the near future there, because most of them are going to Western Australia.
Well, obviously, he reckons there's some kind of threat because he wants to hop in bed with the Aussies in this particular project.
Yeah, I think it's got more to do with keeping particularly Julius Gillard, who's likely to be the Prime Minister after the election over there. I think it's more to do with staying on side with Julia.
But it's not like we're offside, though, are we? As New Zealanders?
No, I'm sure not offside, but I'm sure that's what it's really about. I mean, because it isn't really a big deal for New Zealand.
But it would be a significant kind of foreign policy move, wouldn't it?
It depends what they do. If we kind of get involved in managing some kind of processing centre in East Timor, then it definitely would be. But it's not at all clear at the moment what New Zealand's involvement in it would be. They've just it sounds like Julia's just rung John up and had a quick chat about it, and that's about all we know.
Right, but it was enough of a chat for her to actually mention that she'd spoken to John about it and that he might have been pretty keen. And this is the sort of thing we've normally steered clear of.
Yeah, I'm from Gillard's point of view, it's just about adding to the legitimacy of the policy. She's got a major domestic issue that she's dealing with in the lead up to the election.
Yeah.
So being able to say that New Zealand's on side is quite handy for her. It's hard to see what's in it for us, and it may be that actually nothing much comes of it for New Zealand's involvement.
Hey, talking about the foreign horde, Russell, Crafer Farms, of course, they're still up for sale. There's a few tenders going on, and there, there's a significant bid coming from some Hong Kong interests. But now it looks like Landcorp might want to have a go as well. That would keep it in New Zealand hands. What's your views on that?
I think it's good for dealing with this particular issue that we have with Crafer Farms to put in a bid from Landcorp so the farms don't fall into foreign ownership. The problem is that this is just one set of sales. There'll be lots more, and there's no way that the New Zealand taxpayer can buy up every piece of land every time it comes up in order to prevent it going into foreign ownership. And the much more sensible thing to do is to just have a policy that says New Zealand land stays in New Zealand control.
Are you at all concerned about becoming the guy who's kind of anti-Chinese in government and parliament?
It's why I always try to say the Chinese government, because it's not about being anti-Chinese, it's about just saying, doing exactly what the Chinese government does, which is that, they have a policy that you can't buy land in China, which I think is quite sensible, and New Zealand should have the same policy. Why would you let all of the land in New Zealand fall into ownership, which is, when you've got a small, a country with only 4 million people with some very valuable agricultural land, that numerous governments around the world have said they've got a policy of buying valuable agricultural land. I think you'd be silly not to have a policy that says it stays in New Zealand ownership.
Hey, Russell, do you feel special? Because you're going to be talked about when John Key visits once again the Vice President of China. He's expected to see him very shortly, actually, in China, and he's going to bring up the issue of the protest. Apparently he's not going to apologise, but he's going to regret it.
Oh, is that right? I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me feel special. I'd feel even more special if he would actually say something about the issue of substance, which is the fact that the Tibetan people are being killed and having all of their human rights abused, and they'd like some self-determination.
But if he said that, he may never make it out again.
It's not true. Kevin Rudd actually gave a speech when he was Prime Minister, gave a speech in Mandarin, because he speaks Mandarin, to a bunch of university students in Beijing, and he talked about Tibet and said he thought what China was doing there wasn't right and China needs to change its policy. The Chinese government went crazy about it, but there wasn't much they could do about it because Kevin Rudd just spoke the simple truth.
And we've talked about this before, and it was Rod Donald, of course, who sort of paved the way for this kind of protest at Parliament. But it's just been announced that there's going to be a trust, a Rod Donald Trust, that will tackle big projects. Do you know anything about this?
Not specifically. We talked about it a lot in the time after Rod's death, was setting up some kind of trust, but then other people went off and set it up, which I think is good. So I'm really pleased that it's up and away.
It'll start with $3.4 million acquired from the sale of endowment properties owned by the former Banks Peninsula District Council, and hopes to attract public donations as well. Bold projects focused on the maintenance and development of the environment, heritage sites and community projects on Banks Peninsula. So it's very specific, it looks like, to Banks Peninsula.
Yeah, and there's been some, there's a very strong community group down there and community groups on the peninsula who've done a lot of work in terms of ecological restoration. There's a lot still to do. So I think that's quite a good focus for it. And of course Rod's buried down there, so
yeah,
it's good fun.
Hey, Russell Norman, it sounds like your journey has come to an end, so therefore, so is ours. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
All right, thanks very much.
That is Russell Norman,